security situation at Donald Trump's golf course after an apparent assassination attempt on the former president. This morning, there are still a lot of questions about the suspect, his past, and whether the Secret Service is doing enough to protect Donald Trump. We're going to go through all of that. For now, the former president has not made any changes to his campaign schedule. Meanwhile, his running mate made the rounds on the Sunday shows, defending his and Trump's false claims about migrants in Springfield, Ohio. We'll play for you those new comments, including J.D. Vance seeming to admit the stories are made up. Also ahead, new polling shows the former president's lead is shrinking significantly in a state he's easily won in 2016 and 2020. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Monday, September 16th. A man is in custody this morning after shots were fired in what the FBI is calling an apparent attempted assassination of Donald Trump at his golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida yesterday.
The shots were fired by all reports from the Secret Service toward the man.
The former president posted on social media last night that he was rushed to safety during the incident, stating, quote, "It was certainly an interesting day." He also thanked Secret Service and law enforcement, writing in all capital letters, quote, "The job was done absolutely outstanding." Officials say Trump was playing a round of golf near his Mar-a-Lago home and around 2 p.m. when Secret Service agents spotted a rifle with a scope in the bushes outside the course.
And they spotted it. What happens is that the golf course, for those who know the area, the golf course is on two very active streets. There's a huge perimeter. And so what the Secret Service do, not only now, but when Donald Trump was president, they would advance the holes and they would go a couple of holes ahead of the president to make sure that the coast was clear. And as you'll hear here, even though some of the press conference wasn't as clear as it should have been, left some questions open. What happened was the Secret Service went a couple of holes ahead of the president, former president, and they saw a rifle sticking out. They fired shots, and then the man ran away, and he got caught soon after. But the Secret Service, though, did as horrible of a job as they did in Butler. As Lindsey Graham said, they're overworked, they're exhausted, they don't have a life of their own, they need more resources, and yes, they do need more resources. In this case, though, as Donald Trump said, they did an outstanding job, something I haven't said of the Secret Service, certainly after Butler, in a very long time.
Well, take a listen.
Fortunately, we were able to locate a witness that came to us and said, "Hey, I saw the guy running out of the bushes. He jumped into a black Nissan, and I took a picture of the vehicle and the tank," which was great. In the bushes where this guy was is a AK-47 style rifle with a scope, two backpacks which were hung on the fence that had ceramic tile in them, and a GoPro, which he was going to take pictures of.
So the tip from that witness helped lead to an arrest. The man was taken into custody and was identified as 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ruth, according to 3 senior law enforcement officials. His identity was not released during yesterday's news conference. Trump left the golf course in his motorcade a couple of hours later and headed back to his Mar-a-Lago resort. That's according to a source familiar with the matter. A source tells NBC News it will not affect Trump's campaign schedule this week, which includes the planned stops in Michigan, North Carolina, New York, and Washington, D.C. Vice President Kamala Harris released a statement that she was, quote, deeply disturbed by the possible assassination attempt of former President Trump today, adding that she is thankful that Trump is safe. Yesterday's incident occurred 2 months after an attempt on the former president's life in July at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. So let's bring in NBC News national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter. Also with us, the host of Way Too Early, White House Bureau chief at Politico, Jonathan Lemire, and president of the National Action Network and host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, Reverend Al Sharpton.
So, Tom, thanks so much for being with us. A couple of questions just to make sure everybody that's tuning in this morning has it clear. The Secret Service going a couple of holes ahead of the president, as they do. They keep a protective bubble around him. And the Secret Service, this point, actually kept that protective bubble around, saw a gun sticking out of the bushes. The guy was on the other side of the perimeter. He was not on the golf course. Is that correct? He was outside the fence, right? And
That's right.
Before he fired any shots, I guess he may have been getting set up. That's when the Secret Service fired shots at him, right?
That's exactly right, Joe. So it's still a little unclear whether or not he was able to get off a shot or not. We don't have any indication of that at this point, but there were some initial reports of that. Either way, it would have been directed towards the Secret Service and not against the former president and Republican nominee. To your point, yes, it does seem like the plan here worked. He is not, Donald Trump is not the president of the United States. If he was the president of the United States, that street would have been blocked off. There would have been additional agents ahead of where the president was, if Trump was in fact the president at the time, or if it was Joe Biden golfing on that golf course, for instance, in that street where this individual appears to have set up. To your point exactly, Joe, there are a number of busy streets that flank this course, and that person, or at least that street, would have been blocked off, and that person would have had a really hard time getting to that location. The suspect's been identified as Ryan Wesley Routh. He was born in February of 1966. Not clear what the potential motive may have been here. You're looking at a photo of him. I believe this was taken in Ukraine, where he traveled to in 2022. This individual espoused a number of strong pro-Ukrainian views and tried to implore Americans to travel there to help the Ukrainians after they were attacked and invaded unprovoked by Russia. So that's something that is out there as far as a political belief. His criminal history is extensive, and that's perhaps an understatement. Over 100 charges lodged against him over the years. And so this morning, while there's no initial indication or any sort of evidence that this individual may have had an accomplice or somebody with him at the golf course yesterday, I think there is a big question in law enforcement circles as to how he was able to purchase this weapon, because it would at least appear, or some indications, that it would have been prohibited by federal law and by state law for buying this weapon. And if in fact somebody bought it for him because he knew that he couldn't buy one, or somebody sold it to him illegally, well, that's a potential additional charge for somebody else. We do expect him to be charged federally. I know somebody who regularly appears on this program, State's Attorney Dave Arenberg, yesterday said that in fact the feds are going to take this over and they are going to move forward with charges. I just checked as we were starting the program, the federal court docket in Florida. Nothing has been unsealed or filed yet that at least we can see publicly, but it'll be the U.S. Attorney's Office out of Miami that will likely bring this case.
Yeah, with a guy with a rap sheet this long, it would be very distressing if he were able to buy an AR-15 style weapon. And so perhaps he did get some help there, or maybe he did what so many other people do, buy their guns illegally. Jonathan Lemire, a long rap sheet from this guy. He actually, in 2016, he supported Donald Trump, but then was disillusioned with Donald Trump well before the Ukrainian war, the Russian-Ukraine war, the Russian invasion. And saw some possible support for other Republican candidates in 2024. What do you know?
Yeah, you're right. There was on his social media account, he had suggested that he had backed Trump in 2016 and then soured on him. There was also some tweets suggesting some support for Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, and the like. His politics, though, fairly unclear at this point. And certainly we should give credit to the Secret Service, as you did,
yes.
Joe, that this is, as much as Butler County went wrong, that incident in Pennsylvania 2 months ago, it seems like yesterday they did everything exactly right. And these are the sort of incidents that do happen from time to time, perhaps not as close to the principle like this one was, where a man actually had a gun and was preparing to strike. But there are incidents all the time where Secret Service disrupts these sort of incidents where they'll arrest someone who posed some sort of threat to the sitting president.
Well,
vice president,
and Jonathan, part of the confusion leading into the press conference yesterday was that there was just some bad misinformation that came out very early. People came out with statements very early. It started with shots fired in the vicinity of Donald Trump, suggesting at Donald Trump. Others, there was stories for a couple hours that Secret Service saw the direction in which the shots were fired from. And then we find out later, though it was jumbled at the press conference, we find out later that it appears the only shots fired were from the Secret Service toward the man to get him to do exactly what he did.
Right, and no shots fired at Trump, who at that point was still several holes away, but then was rushed to safety by the Secret Service. So, Tom, what more do we know about this individual? And is there investing? We're going to, he's the expected arraignment today. We should learn, I would think, more then. But sources telling you anything about motivation as to why he would have done this, and just also speak to us a little bit more about just the danger that these sort of lone wolf kind of would-be assassins pose.
Sure. So as far as this individual, we're not told he's made any sort of statement. Apparently, he was very calm at the time of arrest. He's got experience being arrested, but he was apparently very calm at the time that he was arrested. So there were no statements that were made there, according to the folks that we've spoken with. And Dave Arenberg, again, said that on this network's air last night. So there's no indication he's made any statements towards motive. As Joe pointed out, as you pointed out, we've been talking about here this morning about the political beliefs and the things he's put on Twitter in the past, now X, things that he's put on his Facebook account, both of which have been taken down at this stage. There's all sorts of different ideologies or things that he wished happened politically, but does that necessarily mean a motive as it pertains to yesterday and yesterday afternoon? Not necessarily. So obviously investigators are going to have to be able to put that together. You talk about the lone wolf, the person who isn't on anybody's radar. It just taking a step back in the overall picture of security, we are less than a mile away here where we're sitting this morning from the United Nations. And a week from today, a week from this morning, over 100 foreign dignitaries, world leaders that are tied up with their countries in war, talking about, Ukraine and Russia, what's going on in the Middle East with Israel, Hamas, and Hezbollah and Iran. So you put it all together, this is an enormous security challenge for the Secret Service. That is always a huge security challenge for the Secret Service.
Oh, yeah.
Now you've got this backdrop, and they can't wait for Congress to start appropriating money, this week or next week. They can't wait for somebody to come up with a new plan. I think there are going to be some very serious discussions, and I'm told they started last night. How does the rest of this presidential campaign work with these candidates crisscrossing the country? We are told that the threats to Donald Trump, quite obviously here from what we've seen over the past 2 months, are very high. But his opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, the threats to her are very high as well. You've got family members, you've got running mates for both of those candidates. You still have a president of the White House who has the nuclear codes and all the things that come with being the commander-in-chief, who deserves and is required by law to have the protection that Joe Biden has. And so putting it all together, what is going to happen here going forward, and how much of a lien will the Secret Service have to put on local law enforcement? How much of a lien will the Department of Homeland Security have to put on its other agencies to say these guys need some help? They just need bodies out there. It's very different than normal law enforcement work, so it's not something where you can just say, okay, one day I'm investigating a crime, I can switch over to protecting somebody. No, it's very different. It's a special skill set and special training, but they definitely need additional help, it appears, based on the people that I'm talking to. And I think, you start talking about family members, you talk about family members that are very much out in the open, that have protection. I think that that's something that's going to take a hard look. And what does that mean for our country? But these individuals that are out there that have sought now twice in the last 2 months to attempt to assassinate or actually get close to, with respect to Butler, Pennsylvania, within an inch or two of perhaps an assassination, I think raises serious concerns for us as a country moving forward. If people think they can solve their political issues and their problems by showing up outside of a golf course with a